She was just a quiet mechanic in a forgotten Arizona town. No one knew her real name. No one saw what was hidden behind the rusted hangar. But wait, could this ordinary woman hold a deadly secret? Before we dive in, where are you listening from right now? Drop it in the comments. Welcome to Graceful Valor Stories, where tales of compassion and kindness are told. Let's uncover what really happened. Anchorage, Arizona was the kind of place that didn't show up on most maps. Just a scattering of homes, one diner, 2 gas stations, and a population that hadn't changed much since the 80s. People here noticed everything and said very little. But even in a town that's small, Elena Carter remained a mystery. She ran Carter Auto Repair at the edge of town, just off Route 12, an old cinder block garage with peeling paint and a faded Coca-Cola sign out front. She fixed trucks, tractors, and sometimes things people couldn't name. Elena was 42, but moved like someone younger, strong, efficient, precise, always in a worn navy tank top under a half-zip coverall, dark hair tucked under a ball cap, eyes that didn't invite questions. Locals whispered. Some thought she'd run from an abusive marriage. Others figured she'd been in the military, especially when she stood ramrod straight for the flag at the elementary school. But no one really knew. She kept to herself. Never joined town events. Never spoke about where she came from or why she never left. Except for one thing. Every morning just before dawn, Ash would stir to the same sound. A deep rumbling growl from behind Elena's garage, loud enough to rattle window panes 3 blocks away. They called it Elena's thunder. Some joked she was building drag racers or rocket engines back there. But no one ever saw what made the noise. That's because Elena had sealed off the back lot with rusted chain link and overgrown messy trees. Behind that barrier, hidden in a corrugated metal hangar, was a UH-60 Blackhawk helicopter, stripped of weapons, coated in dust, but perfectly restored, every bolt, every switch, every wire remembered from a life no one in Anchorage could imagine. She'd named it Valkyrie. Not officially. There were no serial numbers, no registration. But inside the pilot door, scratched faintly into the steel, was the name only she called it by. Hold on, what secret is she hiding in that hangar? On Sunday evenings, when the shop was closed and the town grew quiet, Elena would sit in that cockpit. She didn't speak, didn't fly, just rested her hands on the controls like she was greeting old ghosts. For a few minutes, the weight of the world lifted. In those moments, she wasn't Elena Carter, the quiet mechanic. She was Captain Elena Hunter, codenamed Valkyrie, a name no longer listed in any federal database. That name had been buried, and she'd spent 6 long years making sure it stayed that way until the day the government came knocking. It was a Monday. Storm clouds gathered low over the desert, rolling in heavy from the west. Anchorage felt like it always did, still, dusty, and unaware. Elena was beneath the Blackhawk midway through a maintenance cycle, grease on her hands and a wrench in her grip. That's when she heard it. The unmistakable crunch of tires on gravel. Not local trucks. These engines were heavier, suspensions tighter. Vehicles moving with intention. 3 black SUVs. No plates. She slid out from under the chassis, stood slowly, wiping her hands on a rag. 6 men stepped out in sync, like they'd trained for this moment. They fanned out across the yard, not hostile, but not casual either. A tall man in Air Force dress stepped forward. He wasn't armed. Didn't introduce himself. He just looked at the helicopter, then at her. "You're Elena Carter," he said. It wasn't a question. She said nothing. He smiled, confident, rehearsed. "We need to talk." Behind her, hanging beneath a tarp that hadn't moved in years, was her old flight suit, still pressed, still waiting. And for the first time in 6 years, Elena felt the past catch up to her. The man stepped closer, boots crunching dry gravel. "We know who you really are, Valkyrie." The name hit like a bullet, but she didn't flinch. Some secrets she'd learned never really die. They just wait until someone comes looking. "You have the wrong person," she said quietly. But the Blackhawk behind her hummed softly, sensors flickering like it knew better. And so did she. The man finally offered a name. Colonel Mason Rohr. His smile never reached his eyes. He held out a folded document. Federal authorization under Section 102 Mortine. We're investigating reports of unauthorized military assets in civilian hands. Rohr glanced toward the helicopter. That's quite the restoration project you've got, Captain. Her jaw tightened. I buy and sell scrap metal. Engine parts. Nothing that flies. One of his men stepped forward with a handheld scanner, waved it along the hangar wall. 3 rapid beeps. He nodded. The thing about helicopters, Rohr said, is they leave fingerprints, fuel residue, heat signatures, electromagnetic pulses even when they're not flying. He took a step closer. Yours has been active very recently. Elalina didn't respond, but her breath had changed just a fraction. She was being hunted again. Look, she said. If this is about a missing inventory sheet, Rohr held up a tablet. Swipe. Satellite imagery appeared, grainy, infrared desert terrain. Aerial recon. Unmarked aircraft. Flying through restricted airspace over Nevada. No lights. No transponder, but flying like a ghost. Elalina recognized the footage. It was her. Test run 3 weeks ago. You can't prove that was me. Rohr's voice dropped. I don't have to, because I know who trained for those flight patterns. He paused, watching her reaction. Ghost Squadron pilots. Elena didn't blink. There's no such unit officially, he said. But we both know better. Captain Elena Hunter. And there it was, her real name, spoken out loud for the first time in a decade, buried under miles of classified clearance. Elena Carter had been her disguise. A safe house made of oil-stained rags and forgotten roads. But now the mask was slipping. We're not here to arrest you, Rohr said, stepping in. There's a team trapped in hostile territory. SEALs. Their pilot bailed when things got hot. Elalina said nothing. You're the only one with the skills to get them out. Send someone else. We tried. He hesitated, then said it. One of the men down there is Noah Blake. Her breath caught. Rohr saw it. He requested you by name. Said if anything ever happened, you were the only one crazy enough to fly into hell and skilled enough to come back. Elena looked toward the horizon. Storm clouds were rolling in fast. Not just weather, but something deeper. Something she couldn't outrun this time. How'd you find me? She asked. Rohr's voice turned cold. He never stopped looking. Tracked you for a year, just in case. Then he walked away. 1 hour, he said. We'll be at the county airfield. Your choice. The SUVs disappeared down the road, tires kicking up dust. Elena stood alone in the fading light. Behind her, the Blackhawk waited, systems primed, instruments quietly glowing. For 6 years, Elena Carter had been invisible. But Valkyrie was about to wake up. Elena stood in the hangar long after the SUVs had vanished. The storm outside hadn't arrived yet, but something heavier was already in the air. Not just weather, a reckoning. The old flight suit hung where she'd left it 6 years ago, pressed, clean, untouched, like a ghost she never dared speak to. Tonight, it felt like it was watching her. She walked to the cabinet in the corner, hands moving without hesitation. Behind a false panel, hidden behind a fire extinguisher, was everything the government team hadn't found: encrypted radios, flight manuals, a photograph. She hadn't looked at the photo in a long time. 6 faces covered in desert grime. Sunset behind them, exhaustion in their eyes. Ghost Squadron. She was in the center, barely 25, already a flight leader. Next to her, a teenage ground tech with a crooked smile and nervous hands. Noah Blake, fresh out of training. Elalina remembered his mother, her hands trembling as she'd placed a medal around Elena's neck and said, "Just bring him home." Elena had promised. And for a long time, she kept that promise until everything fell apart, until she disappeared. Until now, the satellite phone buzzed once. Only 3 people in the world had that frequency. She answered. The message was short. Valkyrie, need extraction. Coordinates attached, timer critical, Noah. He was alive. And reaching out to the only person he trusted to pull him from hell. Elena grabbed the flight suit and began changing. Every motion felt both foreign and familiar, like muscle memory rediscovered. The fabric molded back to her frame like it had been waiting. She caught her reflection in the Blackhawk's glass. And it wasn't Elena Carter staring back. It was Valkyrie. The startup sequence burned in her nervous system. Fuel pumps, hydraulics, avionics, twin engines spun to life, humming like a heartbeat she hadn't heard in years. The rotor blades screamed against the walls of the hangar. But she didn't flinch. She'd rebuilt this bird from salvage and memory faster, quieter, and smarter than anything left on the registry, and it was ready. Elena lifted off into the dark, cutting through the storm as if it had parted just for her. Below, the town of Ashridge slept on, unaware that something long buried had just taken flight. The coordinates led her east, deep into a canyon system in northern New Mexico, officially uninhabited. Unofficially, it was a known route for smugglers, mercenaries, and shadow operations. If Noah's team was down there, they weren't on a sanctioned mission. They were ghosts, just like her. She switched to the encrypted frequency. Ghost leader, this is Valkyrie. Inbound to your position. Static. Then, Jesus Christ. Is that really you? Noah's voice. Older, rougher, but still him. Valkyrie, we're in deep. 1 man down. Extraction sites compromised. Copy that. Sitrep, 6-man team pinned in a canyon. Hostiles closing from 3 directions. We need medevac immediately. Elena checked her instruments. Winds gusting over 50 knots. Visibility almost gone. The canyon below was little more than jagged teeth in the rain. Ghost leader, mark your position with infrared strobes. I'm coming in hot. Negative, Valkyrie. They've got RPGs, heavy weapons. This is a one-way trip. She smiled grimly, dropping altitude. Noah, you know better. Valkyrie doesn't do one-way trips. Below, muzzle flashes flared against the rock walls. Chaotic close-range combat. Her thermal scan showed 6 heat signatures behind a crumbling outcrop. 12 others moving in fast. This was what she'd been trained for. No room for mistakes. No time for doubt. Elena flipped the switch for her custom defense systems, flares, chaff, and some modifications the military would never approve. She dove hard. The Blackhawk roared down the canyon like an avenging shadow. Ghost leader, 30 seconds. Pop smoke. Get ready to move. We're bracketed. You can't land. Who said anything about landing? Hovering just 20 feet off the ground, rotor wash flattening everything below, Elena keyed the intercom. Go now. Through the swirling chaos, she saw movement, figures running. 1 man being carried, others laying down cover fire. Noah moved like a machine, walking backward, firing in controlled bursts. An RPG streaked toward her, close enough that heat cracked across her windshield. She shifted elevation, held steady. All aboard, the last body cleared the ground. Elena pulled collective. The Blackhawk surged skyward, climbing through rain and tracer rounds like something alive. Inside the cabin, Noah slumped against the bulkhead, removed his night vision, looked toward the cockpit. 10 years, he said quietly. 10 years, and you still fly like gravity's a suggestion. Her voice came through the intercom, calm, precise. Some things you don't forget. Some promises you don't break. They cleared the canyon. Hostiles faded into the dark behind them. The storm swallowed everything. And as the wind howled outside and the instrument lights flickered in the cockpit, Elena Hunter finally understood. She hadn't come back for duty. She'd come back for family. The safe house was an abandoned airstrip 40 miles outside El Paso. Cracked concrete, rusted hangars, The kind of place that existed only in gaps between official maps. Elena landed the Blackhawk at dawn, smooth and silent, her hands steady despite the storm, the mission, and the ghost now waking inside her. Noah's team didn't say much. They knew better. They'd heard the stories about a pilot who could fly through anything. Now they'd flown with her. Noah waited until the others were gone. Then he nodded toward a low Quonset hut near the tarmac. "We need to talk." Inside, the walls were covered with maps, tables lined with comms equipment, satellite feeds, classified files. This wasn't just a hideout. It was a war room for a war that didn't officially exist and hadn't ended for people like them. "Things have changed since you disappeared," Noah said, dropping into a chair. "Ghost Squadron was shut down, but some of us, we never left." Elena didn't speak, just listened. "We handle missions that are too sensitive for normal channels," he continued. "Stuff the government can't touch without gloves." He looked older now, worn. This wasn't the boy she used to mentor. This was a man who'd walked through too many fires. And now he was burning again. "What kind of mission?" she asked. "The kind where politicians need deniability and soldiers vanish if something goes wrong." He pulled out a tablet. Stinger missiles stolen from an armory in Afghanistan. Drug cartels linked to foreign intelligence. Arms dealers laundering money through fake relief organizations. "And the mission you pulled us from," Noah's jaw tightened. "We were set up surveillance only, but there were 20 hostiles waiting for us." Elena leaned forward. "You think someone fed you to them?" "I know they did." He tapped the screen again. "We've been compromised 3 times in the last month. Each time worse than the last." Elena felt something shift. She'd seen this before, back when Ghost Squadron began to unravel. Missions that didn't make sense. Intel that felt wrong. "Someone's cleaning house," she said quietly. Noah nodded. "And it starts with us." He stood, walked to a hidden wall safe, opened it, pulled out 3 hard drives, a stack of folders, and a sealed envelope. "I've been collecting evidence for 2 years. Everything. Every mission, every lie." Elena flipped through a file. "Operation Clean Slate, marked compartmentalized. Access level ultra black." The title made her stomach drop. "Systematic elimination of personnel with knowledge of unauthorized operations." A list of names followed. Call signs Ghost 1 through Ghost 8. 7 had been crossed out in red. Only 2 remained, Ghost 6, Noah Blake. Ghost 2, Valkyrie. Elena looked up. "They're not just cleaning house. They're erasing it." Noah didn't hesitate. "Exactly. And I think I know who's behind it." He tapped another screen. Pulled up a personnel file. The name at the top hit like a hammer. Colonel Mason Rohr. Call sign Reaper. "He was one of us," Noah said. "The youngest pilot. Brilliant. Ruthless." Elna remembered. She had flown with him once. He transferred to Pentagon Intelligence after the unit disbanded. Rose fast, too fast, and now he has access to every ghost file ever sealed. Elena's blood went cold. Rohr hadn't come to recruit her. He came to finish the list. "The mission, the request for me, it was bait," she whispered. "He wanted me in the open." Noah nodded. "Tracked your movements. Used my signal to lure you out. He knew you'd come if I was in danger." She looked at the ceiling. At the quiet hum of the servers, at everything they'd uncovered. "He's selling our history," Noah said. "Espionage for promotion, and cleaning up anyone who could expose him." Elena stood still for a moment. Then something in her eyes hardened. "What do you need from me?" Noah didn't flinch. "I need Valkyrie to disappear again. Go back to Ash Ridge. Let them think they've won. And you, I'm going to be bait. Make myself the most visible ghost left. While they chase me, you gather everything. Then we end this." Elena nodded slowly. "I'll draw them out." She stepped toward the hangar door where her Blackhawk waited. Noah added, "They'll come fast and hard, with badges, warrants, enough firepower to look official." "Let them," she said, and she walked into the light. That evening, Elalina returned to Ash Ridge. The same desert dust, the same sky. But the silence now felt tighter. People watched more closely. Sheriff Clay lingered too long when he stopped by. A black sedan passed the diner twice in an hour. They were probing, looking for cracks. She gave them what they wanted. At midnight, she activated the hangar sensors, rerouted cameras, broadcast fake activity on frequencies she knew they monitored, let them see a fugitive preparing to flee. She powered up the Blackhawk once, let it roar, then shut it down, and slipped out the back. By sunrise, she was 20 miles away. Hidden in a canyon the government didn't know existed. Watching, waiting. The convoy came like clockwork. Helicopters, SUVs, task force jackets with acronyms that made things look legal. They surrounded the shop, kicked down the hangar door, found nothing except a message. Spray painted on the floor, bold and clear, "Ghost Squadron sends their regards." From her hideout, Elena keyed the radio. "This is Valkyrie to all units. You're a day late and several $1 billion short." The response came sharp and angry. "Valkyrie, this is Task Force Commander Roar. You're surrounded. You have no escape. Surrender now." She laughed. "Marcus, you always were better at lying than flying. But you made one mistake." "What's that?" "You assumed I was running from you." Elalina started the engines. The Black Hawk came alive. "I'm not running, Marcus. I'm hunting." And with that, she rose into the storm, wings of steel beneath her and fire in her chest. The final battle had just begun. The chase had ended hours ago, but the truth was still spreading, leaking into secure channels, crashing through firewalls, landing in inboxes where it couldn't be ignored. Every agency that mattered was now watching. Colonel Mason Rohr was grounded before his boots even touched the tarmac, intercepted by federal agents at the next airfield, stripped of command, and placed under arrest without ceremony. He didn't resist. He didn't speak. But the fallout had just begun. Within days, the words Ghost Squadron, once classified beyond top secret, were spoken aloud on Capitol Hill. Oversight committees convened. Congressional hearings launched. And across the country, 7 families received the phone calls they'd waited a decade for. Calls that didn't come from the Pentagon, but from truth itself, telling them their sons and daughters hadn't died in training accidents. They had died serving in silence. As part of a unit that was never meant to be remembered until now. At Arlington National Cemetery, 7 white headstones were installed side by side. Each one engraved with the name, rank, and call sign of a fallen pilot. Ghosts now honored with the dignity they'd earned. The ceremony was quiet, closed to the public, but heavy with meaning. A folded flag was handed to each family. A 21-gun salute cracked through the silence like thunder across sacred ground. At the edge of the crowd, standing just beyond the reach of the cameras, was a woman in civilian clothes, wearing dark sunglasses. She didn't approach, didn't speak, she just watched. And when the final note of taps faded on the wind, Elena turned and walked away. There were no medals pinned to her chest, no recognition waiting at the gate. And that was how she preferred it, because Valkyrie didn't come back for thanks. She came back for the truth. And now the record was set right. She returned to Ashbridge 3 days later. Same town, same air, same steady routine. But beneath the surface, everything had changed. People still brought her engines to fix. Still waved as they passed the garage. But now there was something else in their eyes. Respect. Even if they didn't know why, even if they'd never ask. Elalina kept her rhythm. Morning started before dawn. Tools cleaned, machines restored, and once a week, the sound of distant thunder returned, just for a few minutes. The Blackhawk was never far, always fueled, always ready. Then one afternoon in early fall, a young woman in uniform stepped into the shop. Short brown hair, clean-cut posture, a face too young for the weight she carried. "Are you Elena Carter?" she asked. Elena didn't answer right away. Just wiped her hands. Looked the girl over. No insignia, but the bearing was unmistakable. "Depends who's asking." "Lieutenant Emily Monroe, Army Aviation. I was told you might be able to help with a problem." Elena gestured toward the chairs by the window. "Coffee?" The girl nodded. They sat in silence for a while. Then Emily reached into her jacket, pulled out a photograph, satellite imagery. Black and white, a Blackhawk flying through a canyon at angles that shouldn't be possible. Elena didn't react, but she recognized the terrain. "This was taken 2 weeks ago," Emily said. "The tech on board, it doesn't match any known program, but the flight pattern, it matches one from a training manual I was told didn't exist." Elena sipped her coffee, said nothing, waited. Emily leaned forward. "There's a new program, classified, off the books, recruits pilots like me. Good skills, light personal ties, easy to isolate." She paused. "They say it's for national security, but some of the pilots, they're changing, pulling away, breaking." Her voice dropped. "I think they're rebuilding Ghost Squadron." The shop went still. Only the ticking of the clock filled the space. Elena stared out the window toward the back lot. And then, softly, "What do you want from me?" Emily's voice was steady now. "I want the truth. And I want to know if there's another way." Elena stood slowly, walked behind the counter, pulled out a plain white card, no name, no title, just a phone number. She handed it to the lieutenant. "If you decide you don't want to be a tool," she said, "call that number. Tell them Elena sent you." Emily studied it like it might burn through her fingers. "And what about you?" she asked. "Are you really just a mechanic?" Elena's gaze drifted toward the hangar, toward the shape beneath the tarp, the heartbeat beneath the steel. "I fix things that are broken," she said. "Engines, people, sometimes systems that lose their way." Emily didn't ask anything else. She nodded once and walked out the door. The bell chimed softly behind her, and for a while, the shop was quiet again. That night, the radio on Elena's desk buzzed once, then again a secure line known only to a handful of voices. She answered on the second ring. "This is Carter Otto." Noah's voice came through, low but clear. "We've got a situation." The lieutenant walked away from the program. Elena looked toward the hangar where the Blackhawk was already uncovered. Tools were still laid out, engine panels open. She hadn't stopped preparing. She smiled just slightly. "Let them come," she said. "Ghost Squadron protects its own." Outside, Ashridge slept beneath the stars, unaware that a battle had just been restarted. Not with bullets, but with conviction. And somewhere in the stillness, a legend stirred. Not in a press release, not in a database, but in the shadows where honor lives quietly. And sometimes when the wind shifted just right, you could still hear the sound of distant rotor blades over the desert. A reminder that some ghosts never die. They just wait until they're needed.